Today's class is brought to you by AeroPress Coffee. Okay, what are we down to? 39 people weeding out the weak, left with those with stamina, determination, and drive. For those that aren't here and are catching the recording, also love you very much. Mm, we are on class. What? What class are we on? Someone said class 8. That's optimistic. I'm thinking of it as class 9. It's our ninth meeting of 10. We just happen to have missed one. So we're on class 8, which means next class we have a problem because we have to cover two classes. And we'll figure it out. I've been in worse situations. Mm, can you all hear me okay? Can someone give me a sound check? I feel like I'm talking into a void.
No, you're not
Someone is
talking
out
into a void.
there. All right. People are
Yes,
out there.
we hear you well.
All right. Todd gives the background a thumbs up. I was trying to figure out exactly where it was from with Nicole this morning. Definitely Diamond Mountain. Anyway, we're doing great. We have two classes left. Um, so let's begin. Mm, today's class is, I had a breakthrough on this class also. I figured out why the course is called what it's called. I'm so excited. So at the beginning of this course, we said, why is it called the proof of future lives when the main proof is of past lives? And today we get into that proof, the proof of Buddhist philosophy on the proof of past lives. In this class, see if, I don't know, I have a new theory on why he calls it the proof of future lives. See if we can catch it. Okay. All right. To start though, I want to share some different, because we are so far behind, I want to just go off on a tangent and talk about trees. Because I'm back home in Canada and the trees are amazing. And it reminded me of a story from a teacher named Baba Hari Das. And he talked about when we go into the woods, when we go in the forest and we look at trees, we just, trees are amazing. And we just, for me, it's like, it's where I feel really at home is in the forest. And you don't look at a tree and be like, that one's good, but that one's bad because that one's fat and that one's thin, and that one's tall and that one's short, or that one's straight, but that one's bent. No one, I don't think, goes into a forest and starts judging all the trees. Like that one's just a little bit too fat, you know? Look how fat that tree is. That tree's too skinny. Why is that tree shaped like that? It's more like everything's okay, everything's magical. But is for some reason, as soon as we get around humans, we start to immediately judge. And maybe it's because of our insecurity of being human. I don't judge myself with trees because I'm not a tree. But when I'm around humans, like, well, that person has more hair than I do. That one has more money than I do, or they have more fame, or more people go to their class, or we find dimensions or aspects to compare ourselves with. Am I as good a student? Am I as beautiful? Am I as effective at work? Or whatever. And we just start judging, or I start judging. And so we should start to see people as trees and just appreciate them and have the same attitude about people as we do with trees, and to see the truth in that. And which means to accept our own truth of who we are. We're just human, we're just human beings. And so without denying like who we are or our humanity, like we have, I think in yoga or Buddhism, we have this thing of here I am now, and at some point in the future, I'll be divine. And it creates this, and there's truth to that. But can we be more accepting of the divinity of who we are right now, where we are right now, without feeling bad about who we're not, right? And we can acknowledge, I'm a practitioner, I'm on the path, but to acknowledge the divinity of that, not to have pride in it, not to have judgment, but just appreciate it. I am who I am right now. And I can't get too down on myself when I get mad at my mom, which is I'm home alone with mom. It's a precarious situation here at the Birney household because you can drive me crazy as much as we love each other. But I'm trying. I can do better. But I can only do what I'm capable of right now. And I fail a lot. It's okay. I don't need to pretend to be any better than I am. And ACI 16, hopefully for people, if it hasn't happened already, we're moving through a program and embodying the teachings and becoming teachers, however that looks. But that doesn't mean we fall into the trap of believing we should be more than who we are. We should be more advanced, or I should be more advanced than my students. So when I don't feel that, then I need to pretend for the sake of students. Like that idea of embracing the role of a teacher or a mentor or a guide. So I have to be more than who I am. You know, what a bunch of bullshit. Like we shouldn't fall into that pressure. I've met someone that I knew was struggling with loom and with like chronic imbalance. And I had a friend that was struggling with that. And I was like, can I connect you to? Because I don't get loom. It's not, I don't have a lot of experience with that. Um, and they were like, no, because if they know I'm struggling, they'll think bad of my organization. It will look bad on the organization. I've seen teachers lie to protect themselves from criticism. I've seen teachers push themselves up by pushing other people down. I'm I'm sure I do those things. But we need to, it comes from this idea of thinking we need to be more than who we are. We don't need to know all the answers. And as a student, we often put teachers in that position. Like there can be a laziness in just going to the teacher and asking. And then we put the teacher in the position of having an answer. And then we just take that answer and take that opinion of the teacher as something more than that. And we stop thinking. And that's not Guru Yoga, and it's surely not Tantra. That would be way too easy. So we go to a teacher, or we are a teacher, and we get asked a question. We have to make sure that we're not giving somebody a way out of being too lazy, which frustrates students when you never give anybody a straight answer. Maybe it's because you want them to think, have their own answer, encourage them to find their own path. Often there isn't the answer. So we can do our best and share our experience. And some people will like it, and that's their problem. And some people won't like it, and that's their problem. My problem is just to acknowledge and joyfully accept where I'm at and allow myself to be human. And and then I think things change faster because we're not locked in a model of who we should be. And we're not locked in a model of being frozen in our problems. And then we can see change and we can see our own beauty. And that can be frightening because it might not look like the model of who I'm supposed to be, or maybe even who we've cultivated ourselves to be over years. Right? I had to I had to be the best to be good, or I had to do this to be beautiful, or I had to do this to be the best. I had to do this to be successful. We have these paradigms of what those things look like. But maybe what Baba Hari Das says, maybe what we need is to be like the rock or the river or the tree. We don't judge those things. We just acknowledge them and we see their beauty. So it's not so much about loving ourselves or liking ourselves for this quality or that quality. It's about knowing ourselves and who we are, human, and seeing the perfect beauty in that and seeing the divinity in that. And then if we could embrace that, then maybe our world would change because we're not locked into how we think it should be. And we can get beyond some unhealthy ideas of good and bad or self-judgment. And that feels important. Michael once said to me, you don't, we think my mind is, you know, 1,000 bad thoughts a day. It's like 99% working in a world of self-existence. So it feels so impossible to go from 99% self-existent thoughts to 0%. Like how would I ever get there? He said you don't need to change 99%. You need to change 5%. If you changed 5%, your world would be a miracle. And that was encouraging. It seems more doable. You know, if we changed 5%, our world would be a miracle. And it might be that to get something that we never had, we have to do something we never did. And, you know, and we take these opportunities to, courses like this to think about, reflect on our path where we're at. It's an opportunity to reflect on, am I living the decisions, the life that that I want? What boxes do I still hold myself in? I need to free myself of. And that's a process. I think yoga and Buddhism can be overly goal orientated. We forget the finding joy in the process. So like this, seeing each other and ourselves as a rock, a tree, a river. Slide 1. Let's talk about compassion, compassion, compassion. Um, Compassion in Tibetan is called Nyingje. Say Nyingje. 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 J is like it's like an honorific, like Jetson Kappa. Ning is the heart or the essence. So it's the Nyingje. It's like, usually translates it as the Lord of Hearts, like the highest heart. Or it also means compassion. The Tibetan word for compassion. Who knows the Sanskrit for compassion? Nyingje in Sanskrit.
Karuna.
Yeah, we got some Karuna answers. Cool. So we're going to talk about three different kinds of compassion. First level, just ordinary compassion, Nyingje. And it's the simple desire that people are free of suffering. Just like that. Um, Next one, second level, great compassion. If compassion is karuna, what is great compassion? Dan, nice answer. Maha karuna. Awesome. What about Tibetan? Can Dan go 2 for 2?
Nyingje Chenpo.
Who said that? Was that Eka? Yeah, Ningje Chimpo. Please write it in the chat. Ningje Chimpo or Maha Karuna. Maybe someone could find the diacritics. I think it's Maha Karuna. Then we could pronounce it properly, and Michael Johnson would be so happy. This is the compassion. Oh, I got it right. Yay, Maha Karuna. Um, it's the wish that I could free people of suffering, and I take on that responsibility. It's like, it, yeah, we'll review it in a second. So that's the second level. It's the karuna, compassion that's like, I want to take away every single person's suffering, all of it. So it's a much bigger form of compassion. It's maha compassion. It's chenpo. Third one, it's called tukche chenpo. I don't know the Sanskrit for it. Um, but tuk, it's the same as ning. It's the same word. It means heart or mind or essence, but it's the honorific form of it. So it's like if you talk about a normal person's cup, there's a word for it. But if you talk about like a high lama, there's a whole different word for their cup. Like in Tibetan, there's a whole language that's built on honorifics. So tuk chechenpo is to describe the compassion of an enlightened being. It gets a whole new word. The compassion of an enlightened being. Now that's tuk chechenpo. So it's not unusual to meet someone with compassion, karuna. You know, wanting, like when we see suffering and like, oh, it kind of hurts my heart when I pass people sleeping in the street, or something like that. Or when my friend has a back pain, or someone, you know, stubs their toe, they kick something and stub their toe. It's like, oh, I wish that didn't happen to you. It's pretty common. Second level, though, great compassion, it kind of requires some faith or some philosophy. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's like, I understand that if I became an enlightened being, I could emanate 1,000 bodies to help people all over the world, other planets, instantly, spontaneously. I want to do that. That's what I want to do. In Tibetan, that's Nyingje Chempo. So that requires us to, you know, accept a paradigm of an enlightened being, and an enlightened being that can send out bodies or emanate. But it, so we can accept it, you know, as a very literal idea like that, or think of it as like, I just want to be more vast in the world. You know, how could I? It's nice to feed one person. How could I feed 10,000 people? You know, how can I increase my capacity in the world? I have two arms, but what if I was like Chenrezig, had thousands of arms? What would that mean? And then the third, holy great compassion, Tukche Champo. That would be the person that can do that, that has already, you know, become an enlightened being, and they're doing what they're doing to remove suffering. And so I believe uh, this is the Buddhist teaching, and I believe there's this debate, and I think it's Dharmakirti, and he's saying we have to go through all three stages, and normally that takes more than one lifetime, right? To develop all three in one lifetime would be extraordinary. It takes, you know, multiple lifetimes. Dharmakirti is like, look, it takes multiple lifetimes to develop these kinds of compassion. It doesn't happen in a day. And so, well, what's the problem with that? Well, he bumps into some non-Buddhist in India who says, well, then you can't develop those kinds of compassion because it would take too long and you're going to die. And then that's it. Just forget about it. Like you can't, the debate happens where they're like, you wouldn't, if it takes that long, you'll never be able to do it. Basically, they're saying there are no future lives. There is no more lifetimes. That's just that's just crazy. Um, so let's go to the next slide. And this is a philosophical group's quite famous in India called the Charvakas. Say Charvaka. This is the group that everybody criticizes, but they're always listed as a philosophical group. It's like the group that is the example of people that believe when you die, that's it. And so all of the Indian philosophy that comes out of India is based on this idea of past and future lives. And this is the one group that it's like, well, that's dumb. That's just a dumb idea. And so this is the group that everyone kind of criticizes for holding this idea of when you die, that's it. And they say you're crazy. These past lives, future lives, it's just silly. And they give these arguments. So, three different reasons why it's not true that the mind continues. First, that the mind is a quality of the body. And they compare it to the capacity of alcohol to make you drunk. Um, Geshe Michael used his example was redness and an apple. That's hard to see. Yellow and banana. Alcohol and its capacity to get you drunk. You can't remove those things. You can't separate them. At this point, no one bring up de-alcoholized beer, please. That's not the point. Alcohol and capacity to make you drunk. Redness, and you can't separate redness from a red apple. In the same way, you can't separate body and mind because mind is a quality of the body in the same way that redness is part of a red apple. Second argument, the mind is dependent on the body. And I think the original argument is like if you were in a cave and you etched a carving into the cave, then the picture is dependent on the wall. Geshe Michael said it's like putting a picture on the wall. Then it's dependent on the wall. So the second argument, the mind depends on the body in the same way that if you put a picture on the wall, it depends on the wall. If there was no wall, the picture would fall down. So even if we agree that the mind is somehow separate from the body, it's dependent on the body. Like it rests on the body, like a picture hangs on a wall. The mind is always depending on the body. If you take away the wall, what happens to the picture? It falls down. If you take away the body, what happens to the mind? It falls down. Third, the mind is a result of the body in the way that light is a result of a lamp. And so their third argument, it's like the mind grows from the body. Like there's a little embryo that starts to develop. And there's more and more cells, and then you finally get enough cells, and there's an arm. Same thing. There's some sort of creation of life, and there's physical development. And one of the things that develops is mind. And so the mind comes from the body in the same way that light comes from a lamp. And so those are three arguments for why the mind does not go on after you die. And Geshe said, look, Charvakas don't really care which one you choose. Like, I don't, any of these three arguments will do. You can think of it in any of those three ways. The alcohol and capacity to get drunk, or the picture on the wall, or the light and lamp. However you want to think of it, the mind can't survive without the body. When the body stops, the mind has died. And that's essentially their argument, or their three arguments. And it's not stupid. Like, we kind of have I don't know, like, I wonder if we have a cultural bias to accept this kind of idea. Um, and it's not crazy because it's based on what we can perceive. When the breath leaves the body and the body is absolutely still, it just doesn't feel like there's any mind there anymore. And then it's gone. So what what proof is there that the mind continues? Geshe Michael, he's like, so now let's counter that idea. He's like, look, just because the car broke down doesn't mean the driver's dead. All of these arguments are basically the same as saying, look, the car broke, so the driver must be dead. You're driving down the road, you get a flat tire, the engine breaks, and the driver must be dead also. He said it's the same. It's the same thinking now. And we have a bias towards thinking that we need to prove that the mind goes on, as opposed to proving that the mind stops at death, which I think is an interesting paradigm. Like, culturally, we tend to think we have to prove that the mind goes on, as opposed to proving that the mind stops at death. And it's maybe not that crazy. Maybe that's a good paradigm because of what we see, what we can perceive. But kind of quickly it gets to be, I don't know, hard to definitively say. And so, but the point is, like, do we have a cultural blind spot or an assumption that because we've been taught when the body dies, the mind must stop, because that's kind of all we can perceive. And so this argument is as old as time. The Charvakas are like, here's three reasons why the mind stops when the body stops. And pretty common pretty common philosophical position in the world today. That mind is a result of chemical activity in the brain. It's an argument that's been going on for 2,500 years. Let's take a look at what Dharmakirti has to say. What's his rebuttal, or what's his what's he have to say? Let's go to the next slide. He says, when we talk about causes, there's a lot of different kinds of causes. But one of the main ones is called Nirlengi Gyu. Please say Nirlengi Gyu. Gyu means cause. Nirlengi Gyu. Nirlengi Gyu is the material cause. Maybe one of our Tibetan scholars can find what Nirlen mean more precisely, Roxana or somebody. It means material cause. Gyu is cause. Yi is of. So it translates Nirlen as the material cause. And the idea is there's always something similar between the material cause and the result. Like only acorns become an oak tree. Only an apple seed becomes an apple. It's the acorn which turns into the oak tree. There's an acorn, it sprouts, it gets a bit bigger, it gets a bit bigger, gets a bit bigger. And in 100 years, it's a beautiful oak tree. So it's the material cause. Schlitt says it's the thing that flops over into the result. It's the thing that becomes the result. It's the main thing that becomes the result. And it's the thing that kind of disappears by turning into that result. Like the acorn flops over into the tree. There's other factors called kin, other factors kin, like the sunlight, like the water, like the soil. All of those things are factors or causes for that tree, contributing factors. Geshe Michael translates it as contributing factors. So there's a material cause, which is the seed, and the contributing factors, the soil, the sunlight, the water. The karmic seed. So Geshe said, he said the secondary factors only affect the quality of the result. I thought that was an interesting way to talk about it. The sunlight, the soil, the water affect the quality of the result. But there's always a similarity of characteristics between the material cause and the result. There's a similarity between the acorn and the acorn sprout and the bigger sprout and the little tree and the big tree. And tomato seeds don't produce apples. Okay, there's no similarity there. Tomato seeds produce tomatoes. except on my roof. Just produce trees. Okay. Mm, so now we're looking at, well, what's the material cause for mind? What's the Nirlangi for mind? That's our that's now our mission. It's easy to see the material cause for an apple tree. We plant the apple seed and we get that tree. But what about mind? What's the cause of mind? So to prove past lives or to disprove the Charvakas, Dharmakirti is looking at what's the material cause for mind? What's the thing that flops over into the next moment of mind? Because mind is changing. So there must be a cause. And so in this proof, we look at all of the possible causes for mind and then just start eliminating them. So the process is going to be mind is changing, it's caused. Let's look at all of the possible causes and see which ones we can eliminate. So Dharmakirti wants to prove past and future lives because he wants to show that we can develop all three kinds of compassion. So he says, mind is changing. So if we're looking at the primary cause of mind, it's not unchanging things. Let's eliminate unchanging things first. Mind is changing. Unchanging things couldn't produce a cause anyway. So we're going to eliminate unchanging things as a cause for mind. Step one. Okay? We've just eliminated unchanging things as a cause for mind. So now we're looking at, well, if there's a cause for mind, it must be a changing thing. And he now divides changing things into physical things or mental things. And there isn't really another option. So when we're looking for causes of mind, it's not going to be unchanging. It's going to be a changing thing. Changing things are either physical or mental. So let's start there. Let's do the next slide. When we look at physical things, we're looking at physical things first. He divides them into basically the sense powers, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or kind of, I think he calls it outside matter, like atoms, basically. So he says, let's start with, he calls it living physical matter, which means the sense powers. So if mind was created by the sense powers, what would that mean? Well, he says, if the sense powers were the cause of mind, it would either have to be one of the sense powers or the combination of them, right? So mind is either caused by I consciousness or the I sense power, or some combination of the different senses. I mean, it'd have to be, right? If the sense power is the cause of mind, it's going to have to be one of them or a combination of them. So then, if it was just one of them, let's say the mind is created by the I sense power, then anybody who's blind wouldn't have mind. If it was caused by the ear sense power, anyone who is deaf wouldn't have mind. And we'd go through the senses, and anyone who didn't have that sense power wouldn't have mind, because the sense power is the cause of mind. So it can't just be one of the sense powers that causes mind. So then, well, what about a combination of the sense powers? And it's the same thing. If you needed all of the sense powers for mind, then as soon as you went blind, you would also lose your mind. You wouldn't have consciousness. If all sense powers were needed for mind and you became deaf, you couldn't have mind anymore. So is Dharmakirti's argument. Okay, so he says if the sense powers were the cause of mind, it would have to be one sense power or a combination of them. And he disproves that that's possible. Next slide. So then he continues with what he calls outside physical matter. And here it gets translated as chemical elements. I'm not sure why he chose the word chemical. Maybe someone knows the answer to that. But it's like the elements. It's just physical matter. Um, so we're looking at the cause of mind. It's not going to be unchanging things. It's going to be a changing thing. Changing things are either physical or mental. We're looking at physical right now. We're dividing physical into two types: sense powers, outside physical matter. There's no third option. So we've eliminated the senses as a cause of mind. What about outside matter? It's the same argument. It would have to be, if mind was produced from one of the elements, oh, how do I say that? Let's go a different way. The main argument from Dharmakirti is if the mind was made of chemicals and elements, would be able to produce it in a lab. Whenever the particular chemical or element was present, mind must be present. We would be able to create mind through the combination of what he's translating as chemical elements. be able to go in a lab and create mind. We just need to find out the formula. And and we can't do that. And his argument is the main reason we can't do that is because the very nature of mind as a mental thing is totally different than physicality. Mind is awareness. It's invisible. You can't touch it. It shares none of the same qualities of physical matter. So how could you produce a mental thing by physical things? They're totally opposite. How do you create something that is ineffable, non-physical through physical things? What combination of physical things are you going to put together to create a non-physical thing? Is his argument. It's just never going to be, you'll never create a non-physical thing through physical things. I'm pretty sure that's the argument. Next slide. We're looking at the cause of mind. We've eliminated unchanging things. We've said it has to be changing. Changing things are either physical things or mental things. We started with physical things. Physical things are either the sense powers or outside physical objects. Dharmakirti feels confident he has eliminated physical causes for a mental thing. And so he then moves on to, well, a mental thing must be the cause of a mental thing. And so we only have two options. My mind must come from a previous moment of my mind, or my mind must come from other people's minds, like mom and dad's mind must somehow come together to form my mind. If mind is a result of mental things, it must be either a continuation of my mental things or a continuation of other people's mental things. So our working theory is mind must come from something similar. So mind must come from mind. So we have two choices. Must come from my own mind or the mind of someone else. Karina, what's our prospects of breakout rooms?
Ready.
Oh, great. We'll probably do that soon. So mind must come from something similar. My mind, someone else's mind. Let's start with my mind must come from other people's minds. Like our parents would be the obvious choice, I guess. So then Geshe Michael or Dharmakirti says, well, then the qualities of the mind of the parent must transfer through to the mind of the child. Like there must be a similarity in the of the parent's mind to the child's mind, right? Like if this is a continuation of this, the qualities of this should show up in the result, right? It'd be weird that if none of the qualities of the cause showed up in the result. So if the child's mind comes from the parent's mind, it should share the qualities of the parent's mind. So if the parents were extremely artistic or extremely musical or intelligent, then those qualities must show up in the result. And that's not the case. We could have parents that are entirely unmusical and have a child that's incredibly musical. We could have parents that are their whole life immersed in, I don't know, being interested in art or sports, and children who think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. So the child doesn't necessarily have the interest or the skills of the parent. So clearly, the mind of the child isn't a continuation of the mind of the parents, doesn't know the things of the parents, it's not attracted to those things, doesn't have those qualities. And so we're left with the only option being the mind of the child must be a continuation from a previous moment of that child's mind. Mind must cause mind, and it must be a continuation of a previous moment of my own mind. And if we accept that, then we must accept infinite past lives. As soon as we say that there's a moment of mind that's created by a previous moment of mind, then we must accept infinite past moments of that mind. Because it doesn't come from atoms, it doesn't come from sense powers, it doesn't come from chemicals. There was never a point it came from those things. It could only come from previous moment of mind. So if we accept that flow, then we must accept infinite past lives. So says Dharmakirti. We will now have a chance in breakout groups to discuss that. Go over that flow. Does it make sense? Where are the questions that come up? Are there questions that come up? Are we happy with that proof? If not, where are the problems? If you have a problem with that proof, somebody can try to um, explain why no, the proof is good. Dharmakirti's proof has lasted thousands of years. Should be solid, right? Breakout groups, ready, set, go.
Earl, how many minutes? 10?
Let's do 10.
Okay.
We have Sharon and Ala with us. Hmm. I guess we can start discussing, and if they want to join, they can. So, what do you think about this proof?
Um, well, I'm very sure that minds don't come from other minds. I mean, I see that in my kids and my grandkids, and and that would be really strange.
Mm-hmm.
So that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've always just kind of felt like that there were past and future lives.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really questioned that.
Yeah, me too. I think I had the same feeling. Yeah.
I don't see where anything else makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like this proof in terms of these chemical elements and in terms of the sense powers, because it's kind of, we can logically see that even if a person doesn't have eyesight or other sense powers, they still have mind. So it's kind of logical. The
Yeah.
question I have actually is that about the parents thing, because they say that like if I'm artistic in this life, but my parents are not, that is the proof that I'm not a result of their mind or of them or something like that. But at the same time, I have a question like, if, for example, if we are coming to this conclusion that my mind is a result of the mind of my previous lives, right, of past lives. So does it mean that I was artistic in my past life? Because I think we are having the same logic with the parents, right? So if
Right.
the mind of the parent is not artistic, but my mind is artistic, then we are saying that there is no connection between the two. But if I apply the same logic to my mind from the past lives, does it mean that I was an artistic person or dog or something in my past life? Maybe I wasn't a human being, Maybe
Right.
I was a dog or I don't know, a hungry ghost. But that's my main question. How do we how do we make that jump from the parents to our own mind? And if we apply that proof that we used for parents, this proof, right? Then how can I prove that it's the same thing here? So that's my question, and I don't have answers in this respect. What do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting because, well, when I look at when I look at my daughter Sarah, she's very musical. She has a beautiful voice. I can't sing a tune in a bucket, but her father was very musical and could sing, and his family was. So, does that mean that came from him, or
Mhm.
or did that come from that? That's always been part of her mind. And
Mhm.
how much does environment and training have
Mhm.
to do with that? Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I have to believe that because teachings change our mind, certainly.
Mhm.
Then I would think other influences would make a difference. So the fact that I started her in piano when she was 6
Mhm.
did, had to have some impact on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good question, right? If, for example,
Yeah,
you were born in a family of artists, and from the very early childhood, you see a lot of artists around you. Your parents are artistic, and I think somehow that has some kind of
yeah.
effect on you, and yeah, and some kind of seeds will open definitely in that respect. That's interesting.
Hmm.
No, that's nice. I like your example because it's really is. We don't know.
Right.
At the same time, that when there are families, for example, with several children, and one child can be like again artistic as the parents, but the other child may not be at all artistic. They can be something else, and there are also many examples like that. And you would say like, where is the connection? How does this work? They both came from the same parents, from the same lineage, I would say, but.
So then that really points to that coming from a previous mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something definitely not related to parents directly.
Yes,
Yeah, that's interesting.
it is.
On the other hand, you know what I thought? I thought that when we die, at the moment when we die, those last seeds that we plant and what we do, it actually makes, they have a lot of impact on our next life. So,
Yes.
for example, those seeds that I produce, and for example, if I am trying to help everyone still at my last breath and something like that, those would be good seeds, and those will be, how do they call it? Projecting seeds, like like an arrow. They will be projecting me my next life.
Hmm.
And if you remember, this was I think in ACI 8. And then those seeds, they actually, these last seeds, it's like a lottery. Some I heard somewhere that it's like a lottery, one kind of a seed will just pop out, and that seed will bring you to your next life. It's actually it will define your whole next life. So if there is something bad, like I'm angry or I forgot where the world is coming from, all those things, then I would go into health, for example. And already in Bardo, as a Bardo being, I will already be defined as a going to hell realms, because I will have a form. I will have a form as a person going there, or as a being going there. So if you look at that way, it kind of connects, right? The last minutes of your previous life, they define your kind of next karma for your whole next life, and then that defines your in which form you will go into Bardo, and then that defines like your whole next life. So if you came to Bardo as a potential hell being, then you will go to hell directly. You cannot change when you are in the Bardo. You cannot change your
Right.
direction already, right?
Right.
So then it means that it's a cause for me to go to health, for example. But I don't know if it relates to artistic. For example, let's take the vice versa. I was a hell being, and I am now becoming a human in my next life. So, and I am artistic as a human in my next life. Does it mean that I was artistic as a hell being or something like that? This is funny.
Yeah, it is. And I wonder where purification comes into that. So,
Mm.
if towards the end, if I realize that there's so much I need to purify and I start purifying that, then can I bring.
Okay, friends, I'm so curious what you discussed. If you want to share, please do. If you want to hear what people share, you can go to for me today, it's a globe that says interpretation. Click on that at the bottom toolbar, interpretation globe. And then if you're an English speaker, you can go to English. Spanish speaker, go to Spanish. How'd it go? What are your thoughts? How did the proof, this 2,000-year-old proof, how did it hold up? Yeah, Dinara, how did it go?
Hello, hi.
Hi.
I have a question actually. We discussed it with Rosie in our group. So the last part about
Oh,
this.
and I'll remind you to please speak
Thank you.
slow
Thank
for
you.
our
Sorry.
translators.
Thank you so much. Sorry, translators. So if we go back to this part about the parents that we of this proof, where we disprove that parents' mind my mind was a continuation of the parents' mind. Can we apply the same logic into my own mind? So, for example, if in this life I am artistic person, it's not the case, but just example. Does it mean that in my previous life, in my past life, I was an artistic person?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And that's what we discussed. We have to apply. So the question is, we're saying the qualities of mind must resemble the previous mind. That's his whole basis. That's his whole starting point. And so we're saying, look, it can't be the result of my parents' mind because they're too dissimilar. Can we apply that same logic to my mind must be caused by my mind? Doesn't it hold true that there must be that same continuity of similarity? I think we have to be able to use that same logic. So if I'm musical in this life, does that mean I must have been musical in my past life?
As a dog, for example,
Or an amoeba,
or me.
or a ghost, or as like, yeah, any of those types of rebirth. And I think it's a problem. So then we have to, you know, take the argument and say, well, often we're just given the gross form of the argument. How do we get more subtle about it? So what does it mean to have a similarity from one mind to the next mind? Maybe it's not really so much about musical capacity as something more subtle. Like, is he talking about seeds? That the similarity is seeds? I don't know. It seems like that's exactly my issue with this proof. It seems to be it's uncomfortable to say my mind is more similar to my past life as a fish than my parents' mind. So what's the deeper? Dharmakirti is no dummy. He's the most famous logician, and he's lasted 2,000 years. So I'm sure he also had this thought. And so what would his answer be? Like we would have to dig deeper into asking that question. Well, what does he mean by similarity, maybe? But the logic, yeah, we have to apply that same logic. Next thought or question. Thank you for sharing that. It's awesome. I'm on your team. Any, anyone have a solution to that or a different question? Someone could take the position of Dharmakirti and defend themselves against denial. Benji, you want to share your objection? You still with us?
What, that my mind is God's mind?
Yeah,
That one?
yeah.
Oh, well, I think the argument if you're
Slowly.
if my mm, if my mind can come from my parents, then my mind could also come from a higher intelligence. And I think, oh, if my mind can perceive emptiness directly, but my mind has not seen emptiness directly, it doesn't mean it doesn't have the potential to see emptiness directly, which means I could be a child of God. I'm just not God yet.
You say it again, just in
No.
case a translator didn't follow that. All the translators now hate you.
Oh, I've already been on that shit list for a while. I can see emptiness directly. I haven't seen emptiness directly. But there is a potential for me to see emptiness directly. Therefore, I'm just not God yet. And my mind could still come from, like an oak tree, an adult oak tree that has a baby oak tree. That baby oak tree will eventually be an adult oak tree. It's just not an adult oak tree yet.
It hasn't reached its full potential.
Right.
So the mind of God could get transferred to the mind of Benji. And it doesn't have to have all the same qualities. It's just a baby oak tree.
Yeah,
It's going to grow
exactly.
up and see emptiness directly. Dan is jumping in with the. Oh, cool. Dan says, um, God's mind can't be the cause of my mind because that would mean God's mind would have to end. Like you can't split off a part of God's mind into multiple minds. If God's mind became Benji's mind, God's mind couldn't continue. Dan, did I do your argument justice?
Yeah, but the cause of mind is mind. So there must be a cause to mind.
Yeah, but there, I think what he's saying, and I like it, is you can't have my mind be a cause for your mind because then my mind wouldn't be able to continue because it's caused your mind. My mind causes your mind. my mind and your mind can't exist at the same time because my mind has already caused your mind.
But humans have babies all the time.
Yeah.
So when a girl and a boy like each other, they make a third thing.
Yeah,
So why?
physical things can do that. Mental things can't.
Oh, says who? Where's?
Says Dan.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Did God's mind have parts? Yes. All right, my friends. Let the debates rage on. You all have access to Telegram groups. Uh, we will stop there. Hmm. Let's quickly look at the next slide. Here's Dharmakirti's end result. He actually, if you go back to course 4, he gives 10 proofs for the continuation of mind, from mind being caused by mind. So if you want to go back and review, he gives 10 different proofs for mind being the cause for mind. One of them is that the mind must continue because it has desire. And that's what causes it to continue on in the next life. Next slide. Here's his basic principle. The result must resemble the cause. Okay. Next slide. He has posited that it's desire that creates the continuation of mind from life to life. And he goes over 3 kinds of desire or craving. And it's the craving for existence that is the main one that perpetuates the cycle of life. Next slide. These are 3 cravings or 3 desires for me. The key as to why craving triggers karma at the moment of death is how it focuses upon this idea me. And so Geshe Michael says, he describes 4 levels of focusing on yourself and explains which ones can trigger the karma for a next life. So you can see here 4 different ways of how focusing on an idea of me triggers or doesn't trigger a next life. So if we don't, number 4, if we don't see ourselves as self-existent or believe that we're self-existent, the idea is that there's no craving for existence. And it's that craving for existence that ripens those seeds for a next life. I'm curious about the first one. Why in that first one, just focusing on me in an ordinary way, unexamined, that state of mind does not trigger that karma for a next rebirth. Anyway, if someone can sink their mind into that, I'm interested on people's thoughts. Why number one? Just normal focusing on me. Everybody's normal understanding of me. Seems to me it's saying that doesn't trigger karma for a new rebirth. Seems wrong to me. But I went and checked. It's in the reading and answer key. So, homework. There is homework. 2, did we get any insights into why it's called the proof of future lives? And then 3, I'm curious, why number 1, normal? Yes, Todd, I agree. Confusing for me also. Why number 1 doesn't trigger karma? Okay. Telegram chats, way you go. Thank you so much for hanging in there, being part of this class. I really love the opportunity um, to bend my brain around these ideas, but then remember, it can't just be an intellectual exercise. Somehow it has to lead us back to seeing people as trees. Somehow it has to lead back to me, like the first question on every homework should be, who cares? Who cares? Why am I doing this? What? Because if it's just an intellectual exercise, that's okay. But hopefully there's a deeper meaning and purpose, and to not forget, oh yeah, why am I me so judgmental around people, but not about trees? And as I walk through my day, can I just have that same appreciation for where everybody's at, no matter how tall or thin or short or bent, and include myself in that, and not just accept where I'm at, but like see the divinity in them, the perfection in them, and not be so hard on myself when I fail, because I can't be more than I am I can't be more than I am in this moment. Not possible. This doesn't make sense to add being self-critical to the problem of not being perfect yet. And if we could do that, then maybe we can break out of some boxes and break out of some preconceived ideas that hold us back. If I need to be this to be considered that. All right. Thanks all for being here. And we will come back for last class, next class. Deal? All right. Have a beautiful rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you, Earl. Thank you, everyone. See you on Friday. Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tech Team. Thank you, Frank. Thanks, Marina, Gina, and everyone behind this that we don't even see. And thank you all for coming.